Welcome back to another episode of the Athlete's Mindset. Today's episode is a little different. It's just me. I wanted to take some time to, one, just say thank you. We officially hit 1,000 streams on the podcast. It's been an unbelievable journey, which we will get into, but I'm super grateful for anyone who has listened, hopefully had a few takeaways from each episode. It's been a super fun thing to start. And I think it's super cool when anyone starts something from zero and they just build the way up. 1,000 streams may not seem like a whole bunch, but it's those little milestones that add up in the journey that we all really appreciate. So I'm very thankful for that. I want to take some time to share my own journey, some of the mental struggles I went through as an athlete, and why I started this podcast in the first place. As a former Division I baseball player, I've lived through the highs and lows of being an athlete. I know what it's like to feel pressure, to doubt yourself, and to tie your whole identity and pretty much self-worth to your sport. But I also know the lessons that come with those struggles. It took a long time to recognize those lessons, to understand those lessons, but I've learned so much. And so my goal with this is just to give back a little bit and hopefully help people not make the same mistakes I did, or maybe learn those lessons a little bit sooner than I did. In this episode, I'll talk about my path through baseball, the mental challenges I faced, and how those experiences shaped my mission with the athlete's mindset. I'll also share some advice for those athletes who might be going through similar struggles, along with practical methods for building confidence, staying positive, and embracing the journey both on and off the field. I'm super excited for this. Thank you guys again. Let's get into it. So let's start with my journey as a baseball player myself. So born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska, and I knew I wanted to get out. I think I knew if I stayed in Nebraska for college, I probably would never leave. And so in my head, I always thought, let's get out, let's adventure, see what experiences are out there. So I headed out to Cal State Fullerton in Southern California. It was a baseball powerhouse. They had been to the College World Series multiple times in my lifetime, won a few national championships. And so I just thought, I was like, wow, this is so cool. I went on a visit there prior to going out there, and I loved it, loved everything about it. And so I head out there as a freshman, and it was a lot. I felt like a fish out of water. I almost had the worst imposter syndrome you could have. When I showed up, I saw guys hit BP and were probably pretty similar to me, but I thought that they were just way better than me. I thought they were way ahead of where I was in my journey. And I almost just did everything I did to fit in. I showed up to the cages to hit extra, maybe didn't even have a plan, but it was just like, if I'm here, then something good is going to happen and I'm going to start playing more. And that was not the case. I struggled a lot with my own identity. I cared way too much and thought everything was life or death, whether it was at practice, at weights, anything. I would show up to practice with a huge amount of anxiety every single day because I was scared of failing. I was scared the coaches were going to, start yelling at me if I did something wrong. And more than being scared of failing, I believe I was scared of judgment. I thought that anytime I failed, the coaches were going to go home and they were going to be thinking about how terrible Tristan is. Why is he even here? And it was almost a narcissistic point of view because I cared so much about myself to think that everyone else was thinking about me all the time, about, how I failed, what I was doing wrong. And that was just not the case. People are so invested in their own things. Other players are, and the coaches are invested in the team as a whole. And I was so worried about what other people think that I never just let myself go and take a deep breath and have that confidence. That's my freshman year at Fullerton. We get a new coaching staff my sophomore year, and it was tough. It was a really tough transition. Quite a few new guys came onto the team, and I didn't really have a place. I think from the get-go, it wasn't going to be a great environment for me. And similar to my sophomore year, I didn't do a great job of learning those lessons or realizing that things aren't that deep. Not every practice means I'm not going to play in the spring. And I took everything so literally so seriously. If a coach told me I did something wrong, I took it as he doesn't like me, he thinks I'm awful, instead of just hearing and listening to what they were saying. So it was a really tough scenario, and I let that kind of control my life. I would get done with practice, maybe didn't have a great batting practice, and I would let it consume me. I would go home. I wouldn't want to talk to anyone. I wouldn't want to hang out. I thought that all my self worth revolved around what I did on the baseball field. Don't let that happen to you. It's a tough place to go down. And I had a lack of confidence, not only in the baseball field, but just in life, having conversations with people. I didn't think I was, worthy of, being in their presence or having a conversation, or that I sounded like an idiot because of what I did on the baseball field a few hours earlier. And thankfully, I have grown from that and realized that sports are not your identity. I spoke to my friend Joe Burton. If you haven't been listening yet, go ahead and listen to the episode with Joe. There's a lot of great insight, but he has just some great ideas when it comes to that side of things. Sports is not who you are, but something you do. I thought it was who I was. It definitely was not. So my time at Fullerton concludes after my sophomore year. Already planned on transferring. I think the coaching staff was on the same page with that. I had the opportunity to go out to the University of Portland in Oregon, which at the time didn't know a whole bunch about, had some family out in Oregon, but didn't know anything about the university. It was in the West Coast Conference, playing Gonzaga, Pepperdine, San Diego. And I was like, all right, like decent conference, sounds pretty cool. And I get there and it was everything I could have possibly needed and more. It was a group of guys who genuinely cared about each other, who didn't see your worth as who you are, or how you performed on the field. It was just like who you were as a person. What kind of impact did you make on your teammates? What kind of vibe did you bring to the field every single day? Were you a positive person? Did you uplift people? And that's kind of how you got your status there. It was just being a good person, being a good dude. And it was just a team full of great people and coaches that really cared about the players. It was asking questions about how's life? Is anything going on? I'm here to talk. If anything is going on in your head, whether it's, family problems, girlfriend problems, it could have been anything. And they were genuinely there for you. So my junior year starts and I hit a home run, hit a grand slam, first collegiate home run. And I'm like on top of the world. I'm like, this is it. This is what it's going to be like all season. I'm probably going to hit a home run every game, probably going to get drafted. And it was just I got way too high. I rode the roller coaster like no other. I had 2 great weeks to open up the season. And to my mistake, I got a little too lackadaisical. I thought that this happened. I kind of forgot about all the work I put in prior to get to that point. And I, maybe hit a little bit less, didn't take the time to do that. And it showed. I then hit kind of roadblock and had gotten to a slump like many baseball players do. And it was the first time in a long time that I had played consistently and I got into a slump. And I almost crumbled. Like I didn't know how to get out of it. I thought that what happened at the beginning of the year was supposed to just continue to happen. And I kind of got back to my same old ways where I let my worth be dictated by my performance on the field. And it was tough. I had a few good weekends and series throughout the season, but by the end of the season, I was pretty disappointed in just how I handled my failures. And so first season, fully actually playing, played a little over 50% of the games, which at Fullerton, I think I had maybe 35 at bats in 2 years. So nothing to write home about at all. But so I get done with my junior year and heading into my senior year, something kind of just clicked. And I think it was a quote that I read that said, the fear of something going wrong is not going to make it go right. And I think I continued to just tell myself that over and over because before every game, before every practice previously, I was worried about failing. I think I almost wanted to set myself up for disappointment. And so I'd be ready for it if it did happen. And it was just a terrible way to go about every day. And so my senior year going into it, I was like, I can't control, half the things that happen in this game. I could hit a ball 110 miles an hour and still get out. And also me worrying about striking out is not going to prevent it. Me thinking positively in my head about hitting a rocket, getting a barrel, like that's more likely to happen if I'm thinking about that and not striking out. So started my senior year and started out really well, similar to the previous year, and then hit a roadblock, but then kind of took off again and had a lot of success. And I think by the end of the season, I struck out way less, walked a lot more, which were two things that I really struggled with the year before. And so it still wasn't a crazy season. I think I hit maybe 260 with a few home runs, but it was way better than the previous year. And so I gradually increased my performance. And it's crazy because I don't think much changed physically. It was all in my own head of not taking things too deeply, not worrying so much about what other people thought, and realizing that, you know, a positive outlook leads to a positive outcome and a negative outlook leads to a negative outcome, which is one of my favorite things of all time because it's so true. You'll see guys that are, you know, saying terrible things to themselves after they strike out. I'm like, how can you expect to have success if you're telling these things to yourself in the box? Colby Halter, who was also in a great episode, some advice he gave was, if someone talked to you the way you talk to yourself, you would probably punch them in the face because it's so negative and it's so just not uplifting as we are to others. So almost treat yourself as a third person, in the third person point of view, and, you know, how you would treat a friend. You know, when one of my teammates would strike out, I never thought, oh my gosh, she's terrible. But when I strike out, I think I'm terrible. I always expected the most out of them. We can do that for ourselves. So that was kind of my playing career. Finished up in the May of 2024. And then, like any unemployed former collegiate athlete, I struggled finding meaning. I struggled finding importance in my life. You know, you go from being in a dugout with a whole bunch of guys that have your back and want you to succeed as much as possible. Like they want success just as bad as you do. And then when I'm in the box, I have a group of guys that I don't want to let down. I want to be the best version of myself for those guys. And so the meaning and the importance, like I felt important because I had them. And then you get done playing and you kind of lose that. Even when you get into the workforce, you're like, I don't have these guys cheering me on right here. Or if I hit a home run, it's not the same vibe as, you know, getting a sale or something like that. So it was really tough. So while I'm going through this job search, like any other former athlete, I'm just watching sports talk shows pretty much all day. And not to get into any specifics, but I was watching a few of them, and how they were talking about athletes was extremely negative. Seemed like all they cared about was the performance on the field. All they cared about was if this player, you know, got this many yards or scored this many touchdowns or hit this many home runs. And if they struck out, they would say they're a terrible hitter. And I'm like, these guys are in the big leagues. They're not terrible hitters. But it was just seeing that negativity that was just on and on and on. I just thought to myself, like, as a former athlete, I went through so many struggles in my own head. And I know these athletes are probably going through the same things. They're battling things that we will never hear about, that we will never see. And all we're judging them based off of is their performance. And so just saying that, I was like, well, there has to be a more positive way to speak about these athletes and go into depth about, you know, what is going on in their head, what's going on in their life. Like, why are they the successful athlete that they are today? And the number one thing is these athletes are human too. These professional athletes are human too. They just have God-gifted talents and are unbelievable at their job. And people forget that. They think that they're just entertainers out there, but in reality, like, they're going through a lot. And so that's why I started this podcast. It took me a while to really get it going. I think I had this thought in my head for a while, but I just never pulled the trigger. And probably similar to how I was in college, I didn't fear failure. I didn't fear the podcast not going well. I feared judgment. I feared I would start and people would be like, what are you talking about? What do you know? This is dumb. Finally, I was like, if fearing judgment is what my problem is, then just do it, because I have no control over what other people think of me. That's not a problem of mine. just do it. And if I enjoy it, then it's going to be worth it in the end. And in reality, there's been nothing but positivity around the podcast. They'll run into people and they'll say, "How's the podcast doing? Like, I listened to this episode, absolutely loved it, had this takeaway." And it's so cool to hear. And I just get super like appreciative of having those people that are so positive and supportive around me, but also just like happy with myself that I started something that's making a positive impact on someone else. And I'm a firm believer that the most positive impact that you can make on yourself is a positive impact on someone else. So just knowing that has been super cool to see. And I started to realize that the coolest thing about this isn't the views going up. It's the conversations I get to have. So with these tremendous athletes, with these amazing people, and I talk to them and I learn something new myself. And I realized like there are so many things that you're telling me that, you know, maybe a young athlete or a parent could really benefit from. So that's how the podcast all started. And it's been a tremendous journey. And I can't thank anyone who has listened enough, anyone who supported me. It's an absolute blessing. With that being said, I want to get into some of just kind of my pieces of advice for athletes, things that I've learned throughout my journey. I might have touched on them a little earlier. I'll kind of go over them quick, but just the little things. And I hope one of these little tidbits maybe makes a positive impact in your life. Number one that I tell myself every single day is it's not that deep. You know, if you strike out, it's not life or death. If you miss a shot, if you throw an interception, it's not the end of the world. You know, there's so much going on in this world, and there are so many real problems that people are having, whether it's, you know, getting food, shelter, and things like that. You know, your performance on the field is not that deep. And the quicker that you can have the kind of that goldfish mindset of, all right, I don't want to say failed. I didn't do what my goal was here, whether it was a strikeout or not. And what can I learn from it? I don't think there's a such thing as losses. There's only lessons. And the only way you lose if you don't learn the lesson or find the message in the madness. So it's not that deep. Don't take everything so literally. Life is a lot easier when you realize that, you know, not everything is as important as we may make it seem in our head. Similar to what I said before, people are so worried about themselves that there's no reason to fear what other people are thinking. I always thought about this thing in my head of how, you know, we'd get done playing a game at Portland and someone would ask me like, "Oh, how did they do?" And I'd be like, "I think they did pretty well." Like I couldn't tell you if they went 3 for 3 or if they went 0 for 3. And it was because I was so worried about myself. And similar to them, like they would say the same thing. Like I don't remember like how like what you did today. Like I remember you had this one hit that was sweet, but I don't remember your other 2 at bats. And it's because people are just so invested in themselves that they don't have time to think about you. You know, think about yourself in the most positive way possible and realize that there are people that are going to be supporting you, but they're also going through their own lives. You know, we're all individual beings that when you're on a team want the success for the team, but people in reality really want themselves to be the best version of themselves. So don't care what other people think about you because they're probably not thinking too heavy about it. Treat yourself like a third person point of view. Yeah, like I said, like Colby Halter said, you know, I think of kind of like if you're a video gamer, you know, in Call of Duty, you're in the first person point of view, and Fortnite, you're in the third person point of view. Treat yourself like someone you're seeing. Treat yourself like a friend. You would not say the things that you say to yourself in your head to a friend. You know, you wouldn't say, you know, how they're absolutely terrible. They're the worst. They can't hit. There's no reason they should even be out here on this field. You say these things to yourself, but you would never say them to a friend. Why? Because you don't believe them about your friend. You expect the best out of them. You think that they are going to figure it out and they're going to have as much success as possible. And we can do the same with ourselves. Another one I really like is anxiety is thought without control. I struggled with anxiety. I still do. One thing that's really helped me is almost just like not trusting my thoughts all the time. I have a few kind of rules. Like if I haven't seen the sun yet today or haven't been outside, I'm not going to trust a thought. When I wake up, I'll be honest, I'm pretty soft. I'm always thinking like, oh, I want to get back into bed. So I say like give me an hour of waking up before I trust any thoughts that I have. Trust thoughts when you're in your best, situation, when you're in your best mood. And that's how you should really believe in yourself. Don't trust every single thought because, your brain will just continue to ramble and ramble. And by the end of the day, if you continuously are trusting every thought, you're not going to think too highly of yourself. But if you trust the thoughts that you really believe about yourself, the positive ones, you're going to go places. If you're an athlete, the little things make the biggest difference. That's why I trust Momentous for my daily performance and recovery. Their vital aminos help with muscle repair and energy, while their creatine packs are perfect for building strength and consistency without any of the guesswork. Whether you're in the gym, on the field, or chasing your personal goals, Momentous supplements keep you fueled to perform your best. If you want to take your training and recovery to the next level, check them out at Momentous.com and use the code Athletesmindset for 15% off. That's Athletesmindset for 15% off at checkout. One of my favorite things from the episode with Joe Burton that I'm kind of stealing from him is you can't control the universe, but you can control your earth. And your earth is your effort, attitude, response, thoughts, and habits. And I think that's just some of the best advice that I've ever heard. You can control your effort. You can go 110% at every chance you get. You can, sprint out to first base when you're at practice. You're sprinting from drill to drill. You're doing everything at the best effort possible. And then your attitude. Are you being an energy vampire? Are you being someone that's uplifting others and hopefully getting the most out of them? And just being positive, not only with your teammates, but being positive with yourself. Response. I always love the idea of not reacting, but responding. Responding more seems like you think about it, you process it. Reaction is just you don't even think, something happens, you just do it. When you respond, it's something that we can control. We can see something happen or, a teammate maybe do something that's out of character, out of line. And instead of reacting and, just starting to blow them up, we respond and we go, hey, we could do better there. Or if you throw an interception as a quarterback, you can react and start throwing your helmet, or you can respond. You can say, all right, I learned this lesson from that. Next drive, we're not doing that same thing. And then your thoughts. We can control our thoughts. If I tell you to think about a pink elephant, you'll probably think about a pink elephant. You can control that. You can control all the things that you're thinking about and push the negative things aside and bring in the positives. And last, our habits. Our habits are just things that we can do every single day. Do they make our life better, or do they make our life worse? Will tomorrow Tristan be happy with what I did today, or will he be pretty disappointed? I think that's a way of life that can be super beneficial. I could sit on the couch all day, or I could go to the gym. And tomorrow Tristan is probably going to be a lot happier with me in those habits if I go to the gym. So earth is something that I recommend to everyone. I'll put that in the description just as a reminder. And then one we've heard plenty of times is you never rise to the occasion, but to the level of your training. And I think that's so accurate. I think the Navy SEALs actually came up with that one, and I love it. I think people talk about rising to the occasion, especially when we see professional athletes on TV have an extraordinary game or do something we haven't seen before. But then you think about it and you're like, they were probably at practice, visualizing this or seeing this already happen, and they just executed on it because they've trained for it. You can't expect the best version of yourself if you're not being the best version of yourself every single day leading up to a game or putting in the work. And work is, and confidence is what happens when you put in the work that earns you this success, right? You've earned the confidence because of the work you've put in, and you have unwavering confidence. Your confidence isn't result oriented. If your confidence is result oriented and you go 0 for 4, you have zero confidence. If your confidence is unwavering and you believe in the work you've put in, you can go 0 for 4 and still think, I'm a great athlete. I'm a great baseball player. The next day, the pitcher got lucky. I'm ready to go 4 for 4 today. Have that unwavering confidence, believe in yourself at all times. And similar to your habits, it's not what you do occasionally that matters, but what you do consistently. It's how you treat people consistently. One nice action isn't going to, build the greatest friendship ever. But if you consistently are a good friend, a good person, that's what builds those friendships, those relationships. Where your mind goes, your body follows. And I think this is so true when it comes to, when I'm in my own head as an athlete and I'm overthinking, thinking very negatively, my body gets tense. I cram up. I don't believe in myself. When I'm telling myself positive things that, I'm the greatest, I'm going to get a barrel, I'm going to hit a rocket, you almost feel like super free and loose. So where, the mind goes, the body follows. So have those positive thoughts and your body's going to feel just as positive. KP, Kyle Perry, great episode. He just talked about keep going. He's a guy that battled through plenty of injuries over his time at the University of Nebraska and now Savannah Banana. If you haven't checked out Banana Ball, go ahead and do it. Absolutely awesome. But he always just thought, he was like, there's nothing scarier than a man that just continues to get up. A guy that can get knocked down as many times as possible, and he just finds a way to keep coming, keep getting up, and he does it. So that's something I really appreciate about Kyle is he's always just a positive energy in the room. You don't know what's going on in his life. Like he continues to be a positive energy, even when he's maybe going through it or he's struggling, he gets the most out of other people and he just keeps going, which I absolutely love. Bryce Matthews, one of my favorite episodes, made his debut this year. So kudos to Bryce. Give yourself some grace, like relax just a little bit. He said he wasn't having the most success in his professional baseball career until it was like, I need to relax a little bit. Like if I am so hard on myself all the time, how am I supposed to celebrate when I do have success? And then also, like, how am I supposed to expect success if I'm being so hard on myself when things don't go well? So give yourself some grace, believe in yourself. Things don't go right this time, believe they're going to go right the next time, and understand we're not all perfect. The people that think they have it figured out, they've already lost, right? Because the people that are always learning, they're going to be the ones that pass them. And Spencer Schwellenbach, he's a guy that's in the big leagues now, and he's played alongside some tremendous baseball players and Spencer Strider, Chris Sale. And he just said, you got to be a sponge. You got to learn. There are going to be people around you that may be better than you, or they may just have maybe a certain quality that they're really good at. And just be a sponge. Don't be someone who thinks they have it all figured out. Be someone who is always learning, trying to be the best version of themselves, and continue to do that every single day. And just keep learning, and things are going to go really well for you. So I want to thank you guys if you made it this far, I really appreciate you. I hope you've had a good takeaway. Once again, I'm very appreciative of the 1,000 streams. It's been super cool. Please reach out if you have any questions, if there's a takeaway you had. I love hearing just the positive energy that's kind of revolved around this podcast. If you had a takeaway or you found this valuable, please share it with someone who also might find it valuable. And thank you again. This has been the first solo episode of the Athletes Mindset. I appreciate anyone who's listened. You guys are awesome, and keep moving forward.